Hi, I'm Marion McLaughlin. I'm the manager of the One Stop Shop Aberdeen, which is a project run by the AAAs. I'm here with my colleague Felicity today. Colleague, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi there. I'm Felicity Goethal, and I work with Marion at the One Stop Shop, doing a lot of the same support roles and providing training alongside Marion.
Yeah, so our job at the One Stop Shop Aberdeen, we do a tremendous amount of variety in our work. I think it's fair to say the AAA's was started up, and it's all about providing peer support for autistic people, interest-led groups, and they were getting a lot of queries and calls that really weren't within their remit. So they asked me to set up a one-stop shop service to deal with some of those queries that they were getting in. So we do one-to-one support, like you said, we do training, consultation, answering general queries about autism for anybody and everyone who's interested. Uh, we were funded through the Scottish Government campaign, the Understanding Autism. And initially, we were supposed to be looking at employment. But then there was a big pandemic, wasn't there, Felicity?
Yeah, you might have heard about that.
Yeah, so we decided that maybe our employment work should get put to one side for a wee while, and our remit then changed into supporting autistic people through COVID. And we have been doing through supporting autistic people through COVID, have been linking in with the campaign, and it's all been about combating stigma and looking at human rights for autistic people as well. So shortly after lockdown started, we had to transition all of our services online. So all of the meetings that we'd had with people one-to-one in our offices were then taking on Zoom, on Skype, on Microsoft Teams. We delivered training. We've done some consulting with various different organisations, all done online. So we haven't really missed a beat. All of the autistic-led groups that we've been running, they've still been carrying on over Discord so that we could make sure that our services, even though they were done in a different way, were still carrying on, that people could still access our support. I'm thinking about some that we've worked with. Felicity, you've only joined us, about a month ago that you joined our team?
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty new. I've only been here. Yeah. And I mean, even in the time that I've been there, we've done work with all sorts of people, haven't we? Government. Yeah. And I know that, we work alongside NHS Grampian, DWP, SWAN, the Scottish Women's Autism Network, Bernardo's, Homestart. We really have a lot of other organisations and charities that we're involved with.
Yeah, so it's been a busy old time, hasn't it? Right at the beginning of lockdown, once we were getting into the line, we ran our second Autism Acceptance campaign. So, autism awareness in April, is it fair to say that can be a difficult time for autistic people?
It can be quite traumatic, actually, for a lot of autistic people, hearing about an awful lot about the tragedy of autism, hearing an awful lot about how we struggle, and maybe how we're not competent, and how for poor parents finding out their children are autistic, it's, so they grieve for their children things, and that can be very difficult as an autistic person, to have your entire identity summed up as something negative thing to grieve over. And I know a lot of autistic people just completely come off of social media for April, because they find it really, really difficult.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we decided last year that we've carried on for this year is that we were taking part in the autistic community's rebranding of Autism Awareness Month to our Autism Acceptance. And having a look at what autism acceptance means and how to put autism acceptance into practice very much links into combating stigma that's attached to being autistic and addressing the human rights aspect as well for autistic people. So whenever we first started, we had to have a look at some of the campaigns that had already been out there about autism and some of the information that had been put out. And I have to say, as somebody who's autistic, when I was looking at some of these old campaigns that were run by non-autistic led organisations, I found it really difficult to recognise myself in the information that they were giving out. And as the parent of an autistic child, as somebody who has lots of autistic friends, I couldn't see anybody that I recognised. So we thought, let's put something out there that autistic people can relate to. And we consulted with our members here at the AAA, we consulted with our board, with all of the staff members to see what are the kind of things that we want the wider community to be aware of, to be knowledgeable and understanding about whenever it comes to being autistic. And sure, we have difficulties, absolutely we do, but we also have strengths. We have strengths because we're autistic. We are able, with the right supports, to do a tremendous number of things as well. I've yet to come across something that a non-autistic person can do that somebody who is autistic can't. We may need different supports, we may go about it in a different way, but that doesn't mean that it's not possible purely on the basis that they're autistic. And I think that we really wanted that kind of message to come out, didn't we? Because you've had a look through the campaign that we had. Was there anything that stood out for you?
Oh, I mean, it was the celebration. It was the celebration of being autistic and looking at some of the strengths that we have as individuals and as a community. It was very uplifting. And I think it is very difficult when you're in a group that's so stigmatized. And then to see something that validates you as a person, talking about things like autistic joy, which you just haven't come across anywhere else. And is such an integral part of being autistic and such a positive part of being autistic as well. The fact that we're able to...
The only people that I hear talking about autistic joy are autistic, and other people don't also discuss these things too. And why not?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's something that I think a lot of non-autistic people, once they do know about it, are really excited by it as well, because we all like seeing people happy. We all like to see people who have interests that they're passionate about. I think that that's only a very positive thing. And seeing that celebrated is so helpful for other autistic people as well. It's very validating, I think, to have that out there. And the fact that, you know, stimming is a good thing. It's a joyful thing. I right now have a stim toy to help. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're filming this on the International Day of the Stim. So if we weren't stimming, I think there would be something very weird going on. You know, we didn't shy away from sort of some of the more difficult aspects of being autistic as well. One of our colleagues wrote a wonderful piece about executive functioning, which was peppered with humour, but also really got to the nitty gritty about what it's like whenever you're just trying to do something as simple as going and buying a pint of milk, because all those different steps that go towards, you know, recognising I need milk. Okay, so what do I need to do with that? I need to go to the shop, right? So before I go to the shop, I'm going to need to get my shoes on. I'm going to need to go through all these steps. And oh no, there's some road traffic works, and so I'll have to go a different way. And oh, shiny things in the shop, right? Let's go and explore those as well. So whenever we talk about autism acceptance and celebrating being autistic, we don't talk about just the brilliant, wonderful parts about being autistic. We talk about some of the more difficult aspects as well, and different ways that we can manage those too, because we don't overcome being autistic. We support being autistic. We work with being autistic. And in that way, we can maintain a good self-image, a decent sense of self-worth. And I think for me, that's what one of the key things that we wanted to get with some of our autism acceptance work, whenever we're combating stigma, we're not just combating stigma that non-autistic people have about autism, but whenever you've not had much connection with the autistic community, you may not have been able to reframe the narrative around your own life, and you might be seeing yourself in negative terms too. Is that something that you've come across as well, Felicity?
I think that sort of internalized ableism is quite common across a whole range, not just within autism, and it is a real sign of the sort of stigma in the wider community. And I think that's where human rights come into it, because we often do need that extra support in order to access our human rights compared to maybe non-autistic people. But yeah, I have seen autistic people who perhaps don't realize what they're capable of because they haven't seen it modeled. They haven't had those positive role models, and they just don't realize. And it can be quite sad, really. And then it's lovely when they do discover the autistic community. And you can see that acceptance sort of start, and
It can be hard when the whole narrative around your life has been around not managing things, and but I should be able to do this, so why can't I? So coming across, for some people, the feedback that we got was coming across our message throughout April was something that they found incredibly validating. So they were able to stop thinking, but I should be able to manage this, to saying things like, well, do you know what? This is really hard for me, and that's okay. And here are some steps that I can do to make it easier. And accepting that they needed different kinds of support, because sometimes we need less support than other people in some areas, and sometimes we need more. And it's very variable, isn't it? And accepting that support of different kinds is available can be really difficult too. And I think this is one of the what we were talking about, human rights and getting access to some of them. There is this idea that some things that we do have a right to are going to be incredibly difficult. So things like reasonable adjustments in schools, and reasonable adjustments in the workplace. There is an idea that it's going to cost a lot of money, that it's going to be time consuming, that it's going to be really difficult. But whenever I think about some of the reasonable adjustments that we've seen people putting in, they tend to be very cost effective, and most of them can be free or to very little cost, but highly effective in supporting the autistic person in whichever environment they're in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. I think that there is this misconception that we're going to need, some sort of all singing, all dancing support put into place, where it does tend to be just the very minor things that we actually need in order to, lead very fulfilling lives. And if we want to work, we can work. And yes, like you say, accessing education as well is a really big one.
Well, one of the things that came out throughout lockdown was we were having a chat with the lovely people at the National Autism Implementation Team, and they sort of mentioned to me that they were doing some work on education, and would I like to have a think about what I think would be helpful for people going back. So we ended up creating some resources which are up on our website on supporting autistic people back into education post-lockdown. So we spoke with a bunch of families about the experiences that they'd had and shared them together in a document about what it's been like going through lockdown as a family with autistic members. We shared some information as well about meltdowns, shutdowns, and elopement, because crisis points, whenever the entire world is in crisis, of course, we're going to be hitting crisis points a little bit more frequently. So we thought, let's get some good quality information about what meltdowns are, why they happen, what can be done to spot them happening before they hit, what can be done to prevent getting to that point even in the first place. Because a lot of the information about meltdowns especially are really stigmatized, with people thinking that we have them on purpose, that we're doing it for attention seeking. And as people who have had meltdowns and shutdowns, people who have done elopement, we can say that's definitely not the case, is it?
No, and it's very much the case that it will be far more unpleasant for the person having the down, having the shutdown, who's experiencing elopement, than it is for the people around them. And yeah, that's something that's really important to remember. Is in the moment, that person is very, very distressed.
Yeah. They're the most vulnerable person in the room.
Yeah.
At that point, aren't they? Yeah. And the other thing that we added into that, which goes along with with the human rights, is a sensory environmental checklist. But it's not just, well, it doesn't just look at sensory issues. It's for schools to use with their pupils and have a look at what the school is like just now, what the sensory environment is like just now, what the ethos of the school is like just now, how the child is treated, and what could be done to improve to make things a little bit better. So is there unnecessary noise? Are there unnecessary smells? What is the ethos like? What happens whenever somebody's getting distressed? And it's very much something that we would encourage families and schools to look at together. And I think that goes definitely under a reasonable adjustment. And whenever we look at some of the adjustments that we've suggested in there, some of the adjustments that people told us from feedback from using these documents, very, very simple things. Closing a door or a window, you have to, provided it's safe, and there's plenty of other ventilation elsewhere right now, obviously. Yeah. Sorry, Felicity.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I know from my boys going back to school, I spoke to them and I said to them, I know this is going to be really difficult for you. It's a big change again. Is there anything that I can do that you think would really help you? And they both actually requested, can we wear jogging bottoms to school, black jogging bottoms, instead of the school trousers? And of course, why not? That has absolutely zero impact on anybody else. It cost the school nothing whatsoever. They already had black jogging bottoms. You can't really tell the difference because it's black trousers everywhere. And it makes them so much more comfortable. It helps them concentrate in school. It makes them happier. We've not had any fights about them going into school or anything. It was such a small adjustment, and it's made a huge difference. And it's just stuff like that we're talking about. It's really nothing massive. We're not talking about rebuilding an entire school for one pupil. We're talking about very small adjustments that can make accessing education just possible for kids, and make sure that they're managing it in a way that doesn't negatively impact their mental health as well, which is very, very important, especially at the moment when everybody's feeling particularly vulnerable.
They are, yeah. Well, we have still continued our work on employment. So while it hasn't been our main focus, it's not taken a complete backseat. So over lockdown, we have been working really closely with Into Work, which is an Edinburgh-based organisation which helps disabled people into work, to develop a document for autistic people to be taking into work to talk about their own brand of autism, what autism means to them specifically, and what kind of reasonable adjustments would be most appropriate for them. And again, the feedback that we've had from the people who have been using it so far has been terrific, and we're absolutely delighted that the Autism Advisory Group at Into Work has done a super job of giving us some pointers on improving it and making it as good as it possibly could be. So there is still that work that's ongoing, that we're hoping to release that soon. And again, whenever we're looking at reasonable adjustments in there, it's very often small things like having somebody that you can talk to for maybe 5 minutes at the end of the day just to transition out. How's everyone gone? Any problems today? Anything that's come up? No. Or a couple of minutes check in with somebody at the beginning of the day to make sure that you know everything that's happening, that you're confident with the work that you've got. Small things as well, like, can you send me a message before you're going to pop into my room to have a chat with me, so then I know that it's coming. Yeah, and that's not onerous, is it? That's not going to cost anybody any money, and it's just a wee, small, thoughtful thing that can make a huge
No,
difference.
yeah, exactly. We're talking things like, maybe saying, okay, that those instructions you gave me just then, I'm not sure can I just take 2 seconds to write them down with you here so that I have a written record of them. Things like that, which really, yeah, like you're saying, they're costing nobody money. It's literally taking seconds out of the day a lot of the time, allowing, maybe to have a stim toy, at the desk, without judgment, things like this. Yeah, it's really, it's nothing that needs to be costlier or impact on anybody else. And what we do find as well is that a working environment that is good for autistic people tends to benefit everybody across the board. Like nobody likes horrible flickering fluorescent lights and really noisy work environments, and everybody benefits when you try to improve working conditions for autistic people. All it does is it raises the sort of working environment for everybody.
Yeah. I think the main message that we want people to take away whenever we're looking at education, whenever we're looking at employment, whenever we're looking at in the home as well, that what everybody needs actually is what they need to succeed.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily everybody all having the same thing. It's just having the right tools to help you get to the same place. The right environment for you to be in that you can succeed and achieve along with your peers.
Yeah, it's making sure everybody can access all those basic human rights, and the general experiences that you would expect everybody should to have for fulfillment of their own selves, and their lives.
Yeah. Well, I think that you and I could probably talk about this for another 15 hours straight, but I am very conscious of time. Um, so I'd just like to say thank you very much for joining me today, Felicity, and thank you to everybody who's been watching. We hope it's given you a little bit more of an insight into the work that we do at the One Stop Shop Aberdeen, and given everybody some food for thought about how we support autistic people in various different environments.
Just thank you very much for allowing me to be involved. Essentially, human rights are there for everybody, and autistic people are people. So